Hey guys, and welcome back to The Social Saint. I've got another video for you guys. I actually had a different video in mind, but then as I started to get ready to record this video, I just felt like the Holy Spirit was putting this particular video on my heart, and I really wanted to record it today and put it out because we are transitioning from 1 year to another year, and when we do that, I feel like there's a lot that kind of happens and there's a lot to consider. And for me personally, I really felt led to particularly make this video because I hate New Year's resolutions. I hate goal setting. I hate it all. Like, I really find it so anxiety ridden to like have to sit there and try and predict what I'm going to achieve in the next year. Like, that's kind of what it has always felt like to me. And I've just always felt like, oh my gosh, it's too daunting and I'm gonna set a goal and I'm not gonna achieve it. I'm gonna feel like a failure. And so I feel like over the last 3 years, God has really changed my perspective on how to set goals, how to achieve goals, and my opinion on New Year's resolutions. And I felt like it was really just a good time to record this video and put it out for you guys. So if you have any New Year's resolutions and you're watching this video, I want you to pick them up and I want you to throw them out the window. I'm only joking, kind of. But I'm gonna break this video into like 3 parts. And the first part is basically gonna be why New Year's resolutions do not work, why we always fail them, why they always go down the drain. The second part is going to be goal setting and how to set goals, but why goals aren't quite enough. And the last part is going to be on habit tracking and why I think habit tracking is revolutionary to achieving your goals. So we're going to go through those, and that's kind of going to be the overview for today's video. I honestly cannot stress enough, throw those New Year's resolutions out the window and really get into it with this habit tracking, because I think it will really change you guys' life. It's changed mine, and I would say I'm a much more productive and successful person since I started setting habits. So yeah, let's get into the video. Often, and I hear it every single year, people set goals in January and by March they've fallen off. They're not happening. They're no longer doing it. Like, oh, I'm gonna quit smoking. Like, I remember I used to work in the office and people would be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna quit smoking. And by April, all the smokers were back in the smoking area. And it was like, what happened? Like, and it's because people set unrealistic goals. And my main 2 reasons why I think New Year's resolutions don't work is 1, that people set unrealistic resolutions, to be honest. And 2, I also think that people often set too many in one go, if that makes sense. Like you're trying to achieve like 6 or 7 different things, and it's probably unrealistic to expect that of yourself, if that makes sense. So I think that's the main reason why I don't think New Year's resolutions usually work. I often think that people do it and they don't really have a reason. Like, they're just doing it for the sake of doing it. Like, oh, okay, cool, I want to be healthier this year, so I'm going to go to the gym 4 times a week, or I'm going to now only eat salads for lunch. And it's like, okay, that's great, but just saying you want to be healthier is not an actual goal, if that makes sense. It's not anything necessarily attainable, because someone that eats 3 McDonald's a week that goes down to 1 is still healthier. Do you know what I mean? But is that as healthy as you could be? Like, how do you measure that goal? Do you get what I'm saying? And so that's why I think New Year's resolutions don't usually work. So today, I'm not going to just tell you that they don't work. I'm going to give you a better solution as to how to set goals, achieve them. And I also want to say I don't particularly love goal setting. It's not something I enjoy doing. It's not something I think is fun, but it is something that I've trying to get myself into the habit of doing. And I believe that goal setting is necessary, and I believe it is fundamental. And the reason why is because I think that when you set goals, you are able to not only really envision where you want to go in your life, but you're able to also track massive milestones. Like, I set some goals at the start of last year for this year, and I smashed them. And it's like, it's crazy because when I set those goals, obviously part of me must have thought they were kind of like achievable, but at the time I hadn't achieved it. And it's crazy because now I think, oh, is that it? Like, some of them I'm like, is that all I did? Like, was that all I wanted? And it's like, it's a massive way of looking back and patting yourself on the back, because we don't always get that in life. As soon as you leave uni, you haven't got any like affirmation of how well you're doing in life. You don't get that. I mean, yeah, you might get a promotion and you might get like a pay rise and here and there, but you don't get anyone going, oh, like you're a fantastic gym goer, you're a fantastic, do you know what I mean? You kind of have to set these goals for yourself as a way of saying, like, I'm doing really well in this, or I'm not doing so great in this. And I also think it's a way of looking at your overall life and seeing how well-rounded you are, because a lot of the time people set goals that are either to do with health or to do with finances, but they don't often set goals to do with other areas of their life, like spiritual goals or travel goals or family goals or personal goals, you know, like just small things that you want to achieve. And I think that that is really a good way of seeing how well-rounded you are. So that's kind of some of the reasons why I feel like goal setting is important. So as I kind of mentioned there briefly, I wanted to go into some of the different types of goals I set and how I kind of do it, a bit more of like a how. So my goal setting is done in a spreadsheet, which I'm going to try and put here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that, so if I can't, that's really embarrassing. But I break it down into what I want to achieve and how I'm going to achieve it. And that's through goal setting and habit tracking. So those are the two main things that I do to achieve my goals. And I would say I'm pretty good at achieving my goals-ish. So yeah, so setting my goals, I have this little lovely spreadsheet, as I kind of just showed you guys. And it's split into my spiritual goals. An example of a spiritual goal could be like this year I wanted to finish the Bible cover to cover, and so yeah. And then another spiritual goal was, or a personal goal I had was, I wanted to read a certain amount of books a year. A financial goal I had is I wanted to save X amount into my lifetime savings account by the end of the year. I'm trying to think of other travel goal. I wanted to go on a solo holiday this year. So that was one of my travel goals. A health goal, or like I split my health into two, physical health and mental health. So physical health goal I had was to get 160 on the Peloton bike. I can confirm I did not do that. I think I got like 157, I think. So I was close, but I did stop Pelotoning halfway through the year, and I'll go into what happens when you don't achieve your goals in a minute, or when you're off track. And then I have family goals, which were to build better relationships. I won't go into, that's a bit more personal, so I won't go into that, but I just build better relationships with said people, and to strengthen those relationships, and how I would measure whether that has been achieved or not. And then mental health goals was to start therapy. So that is an example of all the goals across the different types of goal setting I had. Now, as you can see, some of those aren't necessarily number based or unit based. Some of them are more just like statements, or like I said, to start therapy. Very easy to do that. But like, that's just a couple of examples of the goals I had for this year. And obviously I had about, I would say for me, what was realistic is about, I didn't want to set more than 4 to 5, max 6 for each of those sections. And some of them were really small. Like I wanted, like, for example, one of my financial goals was to be able to bless 2 people this year, and go out of my way to either invest in them or to bless them with something that would help them build their companies. And I was able to do that this year. It sounds like a big goal, actually, now that I say it. In my head it seemed like a small goal, but that's actually quite a big goal. But I for example, that was one of the goals I had for this year. So they're not all like the same kind of thing, but that's just a couple of examples of some of the goals that I set. A couple of things to consider that are really important when setting your goals are, your goals shouldn't be overly ambitious, but they shouldn't also be like too easy. And the reason why I say that is because if your goal is something as small as, okay, I want to save a tenner, like, okay, I mean, obviously for some people that is a big deal, but like, if it's unrealistic, you're going to achieve it, and your target is just going to stay as your baseline. Like, you're just going to hit that mark. And really, you want to do something that's a bit of a challenge, but something that once you do achieve it is actually showing growth. So if you set something that's pretty simple or easy, and then you achieve it, it kind of feels like, okay, cool. Like, it's not great. Do you know what I mean? And often when people hit their goals, they kind of stay and they plateau. And we're going to talk about how not to plateau with your goals in a second, but that's what often happens. They reach the goal and then they plateau because it was too easy. Another thing is to not make them too unrealistic, because then you never achieve them and you feel like a failure. And you've got to do something that you've got to set goals that you can actually envision yourself achieving, and that it might make you a bit uncomfortable, it might take a little bit of extra work, but they have the potential to happen, you know. So that's kind of one thing, and only you can judge whether your goals are overly ambitious or not ambitious enough. Only you can really judge that. No one can do that for you. So yeah, that's something to really consider when setting your goals. However, I would say, and as I mentioned earlier, goal setting is not the be all and end all, and it does not, goal setting, why we set goals is because we want to attain a certain lifestyle. And attaining a lifestyle, it's not like you just get there. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not something that you just achieve and it's done. And that's where habits come into play. Habit tracking is the vehicle which takes you from where you are to your goal. It's what takes you on the journey, and that's what's really going to make your lifestyle the life that you want to live. Like, the lifestyle you want to live, sorry. So my emphasis for today's video is really going to be on habit tracking. I think it is honestly like one of the greatest things I learned. Like, I read quite a few books a couple of years ago, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Rich Dad Poor Dad, all of these books. And even if they don't directly say it, one of the things that people often say in all of these books, which, by the way, I want to just say I'm not necessarily promoting any of those books, and I don't necessarily agree with everything in those books, but one thing that is often very clear with these like really great high achievers is they don't necessarily just set goals, they set habits. And when you set habits, what you're actually saying to yourself is, I'm going to achieve my goals by creating a lifestyle which enables me to go beyond my current potential, basically, or at least where you see yourself. So for example, if my goal was to read 10 books a year, instead of saying, oh, I'm just going to read 10 books a year, what I'm actually going to say is I'm going to read for 30 minutes a day. Now, that to me is more realistic, because what you're saying is, because by reading for 30 minutes every day, you should read about 10 books. I mean, maybe probably more, actually a lot more, but 30 minutes a day is achievable for me personally. I have time to read for 30 minutes a day, but it also is going to help me achieve my goal, and it's a way of me tracking how I'm going to get there. If I just say I want to read 10 books a year or 12 books a year, that's a book a month. And then every month it'll get to the last few days of the month and I'm trying to scram through a book and I'm panicking. And that's not a great way of actually building a lifestyle. Habit tracking is extremely important when it comes to achieving goals. That's just one example, but not all of our goals are necessarily like that measurable, like 10 books a year. Some of the goals, for example, one of it, like for me, was to increase my salary by X amount. Now that's not a goal I can set a habit for directly. Like, it's not like I can say, okay, every month I'm gonna go to my manager and ask her for a, X amount pay rise. You know what I mean? I can't do that. But what I can do, what is a healthy habit to get into practice of doing, is when you do anything that is above and beyond your job spec, making note of it. Always make note of it. Like, if you do anything that you think, oh, that's not my job, or oh, I can help out with this, but that's not necessarily what I should be doing, and you do it, and you have the capacity to do it, obviously don't overwork, but if you have the capacity to do it, but make a note of it, because you will have an appraisal and you will have to sit down with your manager, and when you do that, you need to be able to say, actually, I've been doing this and this isn't in my job spec, and so I would like this to be reflected in my salary. And so that is an example of a habit you can set, which is not directly related to your goal, but will help you achieve your goal. So that's just an example of how to set a habit when it's not directly, so yeah. Okay, so now you're saying, okay, that sounds really great. We understand goal setting, we understand habit tracking, but how do I actually practically do that? So like I mentioned earlier, I have a spreadsheet. My spreadsheet is extremely boring, extremely plain, and literally just has like a few different columns with the different categories and the goals I've set. And then in another spreadsheet, I have basically what is literally identical, and I have all the habits I'm going to do to achieve those goals. And so that's how I set out mine. And what I would like you guys all to do is literally, it's an easy spreadsheet. Like I said, I'll try and show you if I can what it looks like. It's a super easy spreadsheet to make. So if you have Excel, it's fantastic. If you don't, you can do this in a Word document even. You don't even need Excel to do it. You can literally do it in Word. And what you're going to do is you're going to check that quarterly. And the reason why I say quarterly and not monthly is because quarterly is a healthy way of giving yourself enough time to achieve something and not panicking yourself. Because if you set a goal in January and then by the end of January, like, oh my gosh, like, it's like you need to really let yourself get into the rhythm of your habits, you know, literally. And like I said, also some goals you might pick up, or habits you might pick up or get better at later on in the year. Obviously, we understand habits take on average about 21 days to form. But some of them you just are going to get into the better rhythm of doing. It might mean that instead of at the start of the year, you might say, okay, I want to by the end of the year be reading for 30 minutes a day, for example. But right now it's January. Every time I read for more than 10 minutes, I start falling asleep. Then that's fine. Start off with 10 minutes. 10 minutes, add on another 2, add on another 2, add on another 3, add on another 4, and build yourself up to that 30-minute mark. Do you know what I mean? And that way you don't get to the end of January and think, oh my days, I've been trying to do 30 minutes and it's impossible. You've given yourself January, February to get yourself to the 30-minute mark, and then you check on yourself every quarter. So every quarter would be start of April, start of July, start of October, and then again obviously in December, when you're setting your new goals for January. So yeah, so that's how you should check on your goals, and it's a much healthier way of not putting pressure on yourself, but also making sure you're on target to achieve your goals. Another important note is, like I said, sometimes you're not going to be on track with your goals, and there might be an extremely valid reason and there might not be. But I want you to take note of why you aren't on track. And the reason why is it's sometimes important. For example, I set a goal to save X amount in my lifetime saving account by the end of the year, and for whatever reason, I won't be able to save that exact amount. I have still saved a considerable amount, but I made note of why, because something happened halfway through the year, which means I needed to invest a certain amount of my savings into something else, which is perfectly fine. It's a fantastic, exciting opportunity, but it just meant that I needed to make a note so that when it comes to now, I'm like, oh yeah, that's why I didn't hit the goal. Instead of me being like, oh gosh, I didn't hit this goal. No, my life slightly changed, and you have to be able to prepare to pivot when you're setting goals. You've got to be able to be like, okay, cool, this isn't going on task. Let me move, let me shift, let me do this, let me do that. And that's really, really, really important. But when you do make note, or if you do decide to change your goals, still keep note of your original goals. Just create another worksheet where you save those new amended goals, because you want to be able to look back at how and why you didn't achieve your original goals, so that when you set new goals for the next year, you have an understanding as to why. Another important part of goal setting and habit tracking is, for me, accountability. It is very important that you have someone that knows the goals that you set. Even if it's not all of them, some of them might be really personal. But it's really important you have someone, even if it's a different person for each of the different categories of your goals, that can ask you a checkup on you. How's that going? And the reason is because if you just do something, you might get lazy if it, oh, actually this was unrealistic, I'm not going to do it. But someone actually might be like, no, you can do this. You just need to do this, this, and this, and this. And accountability is what's going to, no one wants to be, everyone's got a little bit of pride and doesn't want to be shamed in it. So if you know someone else is going to be checking up on you to ask you if you've done something, you're going to get it done. You know what I mean? So accountability is also extremely important. The last point I want to make about goal setting and habit tracking is you are not a failure if you don't achieve your goals or you don't successfully set new habits. You're not a failure. I only achieved 70% of the goals I set for this year. And some of them I think, how did I not do that? And then others I'm like, well, that was so unrealistic of me. Do you know what I mean? Some of them, it's all swings and roundabouts, but I didn't achieve all of my goals. And 70%, someone might be looking like, oh, that's only a C at GCSE. Well, it's a first at uni. So I'm gonna take that. And I'm gonna move on, and when I set my new goals for next year, as I'm currently doing at the moment and praying about them and stuff like that, I'm really taking into consideration as, like I said, why I didn't achieve those goals and what I can do and whether they're achievable this year. So that's kind of one thing to consider. You're not a failure if you don't hit your goals. It's better that you had set goals and you'd work towards something, because wherever you are now, you're still further ahead than where you were, than to have never set goals and to never know how well you've done this year. So yeah, that's basically it, guys. The last and most important point is always to pray about your goals and to always take into consideration God and others and your salvation. And yeah, that's basically it for today, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. Bye guys.